On April 26, 1986, North American kickboxing entered a new level of fame and publicity, when the Karatemania event was held in Atlanta's Omni Arena. Promoted through the Professional Karate Association and Professional Karate Commission by Joe Corley, in the heart of PKA country and with the financial backing of investor Jim Abernathy, it was the first kickboxing show to ever air on pay-per-view, and drew a live crowd of over 10,000 attendees. This may still be a record for the most people to attend a kickboxing event in the continental United States, as even the Las Vegas shows promoted by K1 failed to match this. The crowd had good reason to be excited. Even though only 4 matches were promoted, all were title contests, featuring some of the most famous competitors in full-contact karate. Kickboxing's popularity had been growing steadily since its inception in America in 1970, but despite having been aired regularly on ESPN since the turn of the decade, it still lagged far behind other professional sports in terms of sheer ticket sales. With Karatemania, full-contact karate took a long overdue step out of the country's casinos and civic centers and properly entered the national spotlight. How well was this move handled? Let's find out. A note before we begin. Around this time, the PKC appeared to have close ties with the PKA, the former recognizing the latter's world titles. Throughout this video, I will use the 2 sets of initials interchangeably when referring to championships. The event begins in high gear as a young Rick Roufus defends his PKC US Light Middleweight Championship against Tony Smith. It's the only title bout not for a world championship, but Roufus makes clear that, after only about a year of professional experience, he's already destined for greatness. He'd won the belt less than 4 months ago, and defends it convincingly. Only the second round has made it to the home video release, and it's a very one-sided affair, with Rick delivering the flashy kicks he'd become famous for and scoring 2 knockdowns before knocking out his opponent with a left roundhouse. I haven't been able to find any information on Tony Smith, who entered this bout with a 21-2 record, but there's no shame in losing to Roufus, who had already earned convincing victories over Sylvester Cash and Mike Winklejohn. Rick became a world champion the following year, at the second Karatemania show. He'd end up being the single most successful American fighter of the 1990s, and has gone down as one of the greatest kickboxers of all time. His involvement in this show elevates it even more in hindsight, and demonstrates good intuition by the promoters in making the Jet a part of their event. We commence our triple main event with a contest between Leroy Taylor and Jerry Trimble for Taylor's PKA World Light Welterweight title. The background to this fight is very dramatic, as it's a matter of honor for Taylor and the culmination of a rather crafty plan laid by Trimble. Trimble is a major up-and-comer. With less than 6 years of experience behind him, he's a numerous-time state and national champion and has proved himself dominant, his fight with former world title holder Tony Rosser already being a cult favorite. One of the flashiest fighters of all time, he reportedly was the first kickboxer to have been publicly accused of abusing performance-enhancing drugs, a charge he soundly disproved. Opposite from him is Taylor, who's held the world championship since June 1984, when he defeated Leo Laux for the vacant belt. While he too is known for his flashy kicks, the 2 fighters are contrasted by their personalities, with Taylor presenting himself as a down-to-earth working man's fighter, opposed to Trimble's reputation as a bad boy and party animal. As the story goes, Trimble had previously challenged Taylor for the title, but upon being turned down, Jerry instead sought a match with the champion's brother, John. After Trimble won by technical knockout, the champion felt honor-bound to avenge his sibling, and thus put his belt on the line. He's accused Trimble of foul play, claiming his brother's loss came as the result of an intentional thumb to the eye. Clearly, this is going to be something of a grudge match. Round 1. The bout begins with the fighters feeling each other out with equally swift and rangy kicks. Taylor scores first with a left and then a right hand, controlling the distance all the while. Trimble lands a left hook of his own, but Taylor comes back with several side kicks. Round 2 has both throwing more kicks, the flashiest being a spinning heel kick from Trimble. Strikes are exchanged on the inside, but both fighters are so fast that it's difficult for either of them to land anything above the abdomen. At this point, the video jumps ahead to round 5. Commentator and PKA president Joe Corley has thus far unofficially scored the fight as even. Both boxers display more excellent evasiveness, but the action stops briefly when Taylor catches a kick and holds Trimble's leg. Taylor then lands a countering right hand, but Trimble retaliates with a big spinning back fist. Round 6 begins with strong inside combinations. Taylor lands another counter strike, then Trimble returns with a left hand of his own, followed by a right body blow. Jerry has grown very confident, at one point baiting Taylor with his gloves down. Round 7. Kicks are exchanged while Trimble circles his opponent. There's a hard exchange of inside punches, but Taylor generally has the advantage when they're fighting at close range. Then, the match comes to an unexpected head. Taylor maneuvers Trimble into the corner, and as they simultaneously come forward, the two collide heads, leading referee Truman Irving to halt the action. Trimble has sustained a cut high on his forehead, while Taylor bleeds from directly above his eyebrow. This necessitates a medical stoppage, as Leroy cannot safely continue. Irving declares a no-fault foul and the match ends prematurely, with the verdict going to the judges for a technical decision. A split decision verdict is announced for Jerry Trimble, who takes the title and becomes a world champion for the first time in his career. It's a disappointing way for the match to end, with only about half the fight over and neither boxer showing any signs of tiring. Not having witnessed 2 of the 7 rounds, it's impossible for me to comment on the scoring, though it likely was very close. Taylor is extremely dissatisfied and again accuses Trimble of chicanery, claiming the headbutt was intentional on his opponent's part and stating outright that he was robbed. Trimble denies this. A rematch occurred before long, resulting in a draw with Trimble retaining the title. He retired from kickboxing before the turn of the decade, choosing to pursue an acting career which he still maintains to this day. It's unknown whether he ever considered basing a film on the drama involved in this match. We move on to an equally high-stakes contest, with the PKA World Heavyweight Championship hanging in the balance between titleholder Brad Hefton and challenger Jerry Rhome. Bad Brad has been on top of the martial arts world for about 3 years as one of the shining stars of the Professional Karate Association. He won the vacant world title in May 1983, and since then has been the undefeated king of heavyweight kickboxing, not to mention the 1984 undisputed world champion. Hefton is generally described as a heavyweight who fights like a lightweight, being one of the most agile boxers ever for his size. He's a knockout artist, and definitely heightened the level of competition while he held the title. There was talk of him having potential as a film star. Nevertheless, as popular as he is, he's being matched against an amazing comeback story. Jerry Rhome was a champion in the making during the 1970s, boasting a lot of attributes similar to Hefton and fighting a famous battle for the very same title in 1977 against Ross Scott. However, a detached retina suffered during training retired him in the following year. Against all odds, Rhome became the first pro fighter to come back from this injury, returning to competition in 1984 and convincingly working his way back up the rankings. At this point, he holds the U.S. and North American heavyweight championships. Rhome has knocked out everyone he's met since returning, and is clearly in the greatest shape of his career, ready to take the next step in competition. Both fighters are the greatest challenge the other has faced in the ring. It's very much an instance of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. Round 1. After some circling, Rhome scores the first strike of the match with a right body blow. He counter-fights effectively as Hefton comes in with kicks, then does it again. Another big right to the body. Hefton lands a front kick to the abdomen, but he's already going into a defensive shell before the round ends. Round 2. Another body shot from Rhome, who really has it in for Hefton's midsection. Brad is repeatedly off balance as he tries to come back, allowing Jerry to be the aggressor almost throughout. Rhome is finding great purchase with the ducking right straight, this time leading with a kick to get through Hefton's defense. Hefton comes in aggressively with his head down but isn't able to land anything. By round 3, this is really starting to feel like Jerry Rhome's match. He's throwing and landing a lot of combinations, and even sinks a left roundhouse kick to the head. As Hefton tries to come forward again, Rhome cuts him off with a hook kick. Another kick lands to the face, underlining just how effectively Rhome has circumvented his opponent's defenses. Hefton attempts a jump kick from the corner, but it doesn't land. Round 4. Rhome is proving himself to be not only a master of distance, but also of timing, being able to repeatedly counter Hefton's attacks before Brad can even finish throwing them. He again leads with kicks to land a punch to the abs, then a punch to the face. It's all Hefton can do to keep from absorbing the full power of Rhome's strikes by moving backwards. He's in serious trouble as the first third of the fight reaches its end, likely having been consistently outpointed thus far. Round 5. Hefton throws a jumping kick, but it's blocked. A hook kick from Rhome barely misses, but a left hook connects as he rushes in. Hefton stands his ground, no longer backing up as much, but Rhome continues to steal the first move of almost every exchange. The champion shows no signs of tiring, but he's not nearly as effective as his reputation would suggest. Round 6. Hefton nearly lands a countering front kick after Rhome drives him against the ropes, then manages to block a high hook kick. Back-to-back combinations favor Rhome, who lands a jumping punch as Hefton comes forward off the ropes. Hefton's beginning to show a little more of his trademark aggression by now, and some strong encouragement from his corner urges him to show even more in the 7th round. Hefton advances aggressively, trying to press Rhome with kicks and punches, but Jerry counters effectively. Brad lands a hard front kick before coming forward with hard hooks. Then, abruptly, it's over. Hefton punches Rhome against the ropes, the referee calls for the fighters to punch out, and Rhome lands a straight right to Hefton's chin that promptly places Brad onto the canvas, his head colliding with the ring floor. The 10 count is administered, and when Hefton fails to rise, the end bell rings. Jerry Rhome wins via knockout and is the new world heavyweight champion, the culmination of a 9-year journey to the top of the kickboxing world. While not exactly an upset, it's genuinely surprising how effectively Rhome dominated Hefton throughout the fight. To say he was well prepared for Brad is an understatement, as he often seemed to know exactly what Hefton was going to do before it even happened. Hefton had never come up against such unrelentingly stiff competition before, and while one may be able to say that he simply wasn't at his best that night, I think he was simply overwhelmed. His legendary aggressiveness didn't show itself until the very end, and because it came at the expense of his defense, it presented Rhome with a golden opportunity to knock him out. With this win, Jerry was simultaneously declared the star undisputed world champion. Hefton was able to rebound from his loss, winning the PKC US Super Heavyweight title later the same year, and in 1987, he unseated Anthony Elmore for the World Super Heavyweight Championship, in something of a role reversal, wherein it was the legendary Elmore who inexplicably underperformed during a title defense. He became the ISKA World Super Heavyweight Champ in 1988, which he held for 4 years until effectively being retired by future boxing legend Vitaly Klitschko. He remains one of the most recognizable icons from the golden age of North American kickboxing. Disappointingly, history seems to have forgotten the majority of Jerry Rhome's career following the night in Atlanta. The following year, he temporarily stepped down to amateur competition for the opportunity to represent the USA in the 6th Waco World Championships, where he earned the gold medal in the heavyweight division. In 1991, he competed for the PKC World Heavyweight title again, but was soundly defeated by Dennis Alexio, in another moment of passing the torch. Rhome competed professionally in some capacity until at least 1999. I'm not sure what became of him. Before the final main event, we're treated to what the commentators refer to as a backup match between light welterweights Kerry and Gary Landreth. Apparently, the Theriault Thurman bout was scheduled to commence no later than 10:30 that night, so and Landreth, having been invited to the show for just this contingency, were given a match to fill time. The bout wasn't included on the show's home video release, and appears to have been one of 2 such surprise matches. I haven't been able to locate footage of the other one. I don't know much about the fighters, other than that was 23 years old and entered the match with a record of 9-3. Landreth would win, or already had won, North American titles during his career. Their match was scheduled for only 5 rounds. There was no title at stake. Round 1. Both fighters begin in high gear, Landreth scoring a combination to Dai's face. Dai lands a hard sidekick to the ribs, and Landreth comes back with another combination that knocks Dai's mouthpiece out. Landreth lands a sidekick of his own, then blocks an axe kick. With 15 seconds left, Landreth catches Dai off balance with punches and earns a knockdown. Dai knocks his opponent down in turn just as the round ends, but it isn't counted. The broadcast skips ahead to round 3, Joe Corley having thus far scored the match 19 points to 18 in Landreth's favor. The fighters throw plenty of combinations, but neither is accurate enough to land anything substantial, until Landreth hits a hard right from a distance. Landreth repeatedly closes the distance, managing to back away before Dai can hit him with anything retaliatory, including a flashy reverse roundhouse kick. Nevertheless, he seems to tire as the round concludes, and the crispness of his technique suffers for it. Round 4. Dai takes advantage and rushes in to land a right hook to Landreth's cheek. He throws another reverse roundhouse, but Landreth avoids it and sinks a sidekick. Dai lands something of a right uppercut on the inside, making his opponent back up. Landreth attempts a spinning backfist and hook combination but gets blocked. Dai's largely taken control of the match by now, likely making up some much-needed points. Round 5. Kick combinations are exchanged, and Landreth connects with a left hand. He catches Dai with a spinning back fist as Kerry moves backwards, but Dai comes back with a right hook. Landreth is forced into the corner and holds onto the ropes as Dai connects with a right to the chin, leading to a standing 8 count. Landreth scores with a short combination, but Dai comes back with a hard left and then a right. The fight ends with both boxers still on their feet. The judges deliver a majority decision for Kerry Dai, whose poise and aggression in light of Landreth's waning stamina served him well in the bout's second half. Though the match lacked some of the seasoned polish evident in the other bouts, it was nevertheless both exciting and competitive. I'm glad it was included on the show. The final match of the night and pinnacle of the triple main event is a much-anticipated showdown between PKA World Middleweight Champion Jean-Yves Theriault and World Light Middleweight Champion Bob Thurman. It's a fight 4 years in the making, with the former's title on the line, and may well constitute the single most hyped bout in the history of North American kickboxing. I've spoken at length about Theriault in a previous video and will try not to repeat myself too much, but in short, the Iceman is already recognized as one of the most dominant champions in all of full-contact karate. He's held the title since 1980, this being his 11th defense, and he's enjoyed an almost 7-year unbeaten streak. If there's anything to be said against Theriault, it's that he's suffered from a dearth of truly high-caliber opponents, his controversial draw against Don Wilson in 1984 being the only major challenge he's faced as a world champion. Nevertheless, Theriault is entering into a new phase of his career, taking on greater competition, and Bob Thurman is definitely one of the more credible contenders the Canadian would ever face. Thurman defeated Alvin Prouder to become world champion in 1982, which was the initial year for which his match with Theriault was scheduled. Nevertheless, the numerous delays have allowed him to build up a tremendous reputation as one of kickboxing's premier sluggers. With a boxing-based fighting style and his signature back kick, he was named the undisputed world champ in 1983 and has amassed a record of 29-1, his single loss coming 5 years ago against Steve Shepard. As with Theriault, this fight constitutes one of the greatest challenges of his career thus far, and their showdown is a dream match of the era. Round 1. Thurman walks right into a hard hook from Theriault, and they promptly mix it up on the inside, a sign of how the rest of the match will be fought. Thurman keeps the fight close, pushing in and not giving his opponent room to breathe, but Theriault does well in this environment, hitting Thurman back high and low and managing to gain back some distance with front kicks. By the end of the round, both fighters have landed some good hits, but neither have cut loose and shown how aggressive they can be. Round 2. There's more fighting on the inside, Theriault covering up better than before. Thurman finds himself off balance whenever he throws a kick, while Theriault connects with a front kick to the face. Thurman gets Theriault against the ropes with punches, but Theriault fights out with uppercuts. Another big uppercut from the Iceman leads to several more hits to the face, stunning the American before the round ends. Theriault likely carried this round, being much more accurate with his punches. He's agreed to play Thurman's game, and is playing it very well. Round 3. A front kick to the face is followed by a stiff left from Theriault, then even more punches as he fights off of the ropes. Strikes to Thurman's face continue to land, Bob's defense being far from airtight in light of the Canadian's accuracy. There's a brief doctor stoppage, after which both fighters land several good strikes but with Theriault managing more. Theriault finally goes fully on the offensive, Thurman no longer being as quick to come forward, and Jean-Yves sinks another big uppercut before the round ends. Thurman is bleeding from his nose as he's attended by his corner, but the more significant injury appears to be a cut or swelling about his left eye, which leads to the match being called to an end. Theriault wins the fight via stoppage and retains his championship, while Bob Thurman is forced to accept the second loss of his professional career. It's disappointing that another match should end in such an anticlimactic manner. The commentators remark that such an injury likely wouldn't have been deemed sufficient to end a pro boxing match, but concede that the safety of the fighters must come first. It likely was the right decision. This nevertheless was a very hard-hitting bout, with both fighters remaining very active, and in that manner, it delivered the action viewers were hoping for. Theriault and Thurman fought again about 2 years later in France, where they competed for the inaugural ISKA World Super Middleweight title. That bout ended more definitively, with Theriault knocking out Thurman in the third round. By then, Theriault had already secured the first of 2 victories over Ernesto Hoost, and he would go on to fight Rob Kaman, Leo Desneux, Tosca Petridis and Rick Roufus within a few years. He retired in late 1995. Thurman ended his career a few years earlier, retiring in 1991. By then, Bob's will to fight had largely evaporated, the champ wishing to spend more time with his family after his wife was injured in a shooting, and the last year of his career was little more than a contractual obligation. He currently works as a workplace development specialist, but remains a cult favorite among PKA fans. Karatemania brought full-contact martial arts to the American public on a scale hitherto unobtainable, but it wasn't a perfect event. The abortive ending of several of its major matches is as disappointing today as it must have been 36 years ago, and this extinguishes some of the show's fire. Nevertheless, the event was an overall success, to the point that Karatemania continued as a regular attraction until at least 1994, thereby maintaining the reputation of above-the-waist fighting even as rival federations changed kickboxing's direction on a worldwide scale. The video release of this initial 1986 pay-per-view can still be found on sites like eBay, and it's a definite collector's item for fans of this era in martial arts. I recommend checking out these matches for a taste of history, and to see how kickboxing has changed in the last 3.5 decades.